In this demo, we will show the radicalization incidents use case and the Aragon sentiment analysis use case running end-to-end on Work Package 4 Data Acquisition and Analytic Layer DAA serverless environment. The DAA layer is built on OpenWhisk and exposes REST API for analytic owners to register, update, list, and apply two types of analytic functions, ingest and analytic, and REST APIs for data owners to register and list two types of data sources, ingest and stream. Ingest functions are invoked on a data source registration and transform the raw data source on the fly before being stored in the system. Analytic functions run on the processed and ready data in the backend tables. The registration of an ingest type data source will trigger its ingestion, which will stop upon completion once the dataset has been fully ingested. Stream type data source pulls data continuously from a source, for example Twitter, when additional data is found, so that data is continuously ingested and added to the PolicyCloud store. The use cases start by registering ingest functions that are to be applied on the data while it will be ingested. Then register the data sources and populate PolicyCloud backend Linux scale tables after ingest functions have been applied on the data. In addition, analytic functions can be registered in order to be applied on already ingested data from the PDT. Analytic owners can register different types of functions and data sources using DAA platforms and APIs. In the radicalization incidents use case, the data source is of the ingest type and needs to be processed and cleaned, e.g., removing duplicated and partial events before being ingested into the PolicyCloud store. PolicyCloud's users then apply different analytic functions, e.g. heat map, to manipulate and get insights on the processed terrorism incidents data. Aragon's use case uses a stream type data source which pulls data from Twitter continuously when a relevant tweet is found. The sentiments ingest function will be applied on each tweet to calculate its sentiment, which will then be stored in the PolicyCloud store. For privacy reasons, only the sentiment is stored and not the tweet content. So in this use case, the Aragon's ingest analytic function transforms the data source completely, and only the calculated value is stored in PolicyCloud. PolicyCloud users can then apply various queries to get insights on Spain wine tweet sentiments from the PDT using analytic functions. In this demo, we will show the Aragon sentiment analysis use case and radicalization incidents use case running end-to-end on the Work Package 4 Data Acquisition and Analytics Layer DAA serverless environment. We start by registering ingest functions to manipulate data, then register the data sources and populate PolicyCloud backend Linux scale tables. Last, register analytic functions to process the backend data. The DAA layer is built on OpenWhisk and exposes REST API to register, update, list, and apply two types of analytics functions, ingest and analytic, implemented with OpenWhisk Web Actions. And REST API to register, update, list, and delete three types of data sources, ingest, streaming, and external. In ingest, the entire data source is ingested upon registration. In streaming, data is continuously ingested. Analytics owners can register different types of functions using DAA platform and APIs. Ingest functions are invoked on a data source registration and transform it on the fly before it is stored in the system. DAA provide a central GitLab repository and image registry for PolicyCloud's analytics owners to store actions code. The code is pulled and OpenWhisk action is created during registration together with required analytics metadata, e.g. parameters, description, category, etc. The GitLab also exposed container registry for analytic owners to upload the analytic Docker base image. Let's start with registering the clean ingest function in PolicyCloud. In the radicalization incidents use case, the data source is of ingest type and needs to be cleaned before being ingested into PolicyCloud's store. The analytic owner specifies the ingest function parameters, function name, description, code URL, and function parameters. We support multiple code languages, and each analytics owner can select its implementation. The clean ingest function was written in Python, and code was stored in PolicyCloud's GitLab and container registry. The additional metadata is specified and later shown on ingest function listing. Ingest functions can be specified on the data source registration to process a dataset while ingested to PolicyCloud store. We click on Execute and can see the clean ingest function created successfully. Next, we can list the available ingest functions in PolicyCloud. On listing, we can see the clean analytic registered and its parameters. We can see we also have a sentiment ingest function already registered too. We will use it in the next use case scenario, Aragon. We can see also the already registered Linux scale ingest actions to insert the processed dataset records into the PolicyCloud data store. To ingest the global terrorism database data source to PolicyCloud, we use DAA data source APIs, the ingest data source type used to process the dataset at once to PolicyCloud. When registering a data source, the data owner provides the data source name, schema, and ingest functions to invoke the API, then sets up Kafka input and output topics, open with triggers and rules. For the global terrorism database data source, or GTD, we will use the clean and Linux scale clean actions and name the data source and backend table GTD, and we provide the GTD data source schema and data source URL. In the background, the Cloud Gateway is called to retrieve the data source and place it in the data source Kafka's input topic. OpenWhisk's triggers and rules are invoked once messages are in the input topic. And all requested ingest actions are pipelined and sequentially invoked. The resulting transformed dataset is placed in Kafka's output topic. This action will get the defined schema of the dataset, and using Avro serialization, it will send the input data to the database in an appropriate format using Linux Scale's own Kafka connector. On execution, multiple OpenWhisk actions and triggers are dynamically composed and invoked to form the data source ingestion pipeline. We connect the Linux Scale backend and see the GTD data table created as a result of applying ingest functions on the global terrorism data source. Each row is an event of incident. In the Policy Development Toolkit, PDT, we will apply heat map analytic functions on this data. For Aragon's use case, we register a stream type data source, which pulls data from Twitter continuously when a relevant tweet is found. The keyword parameter specifies for the Cloud Gateway which tweets to filter and select. The sentiments ingest function will be applied on each tweet to calculate its sentiment. The schema parameter specifies the result table schema. In the background, for each tweet made on the topic, OpenWhisk triggers and actions are invoked. A container is running, and the ingested actions and the resulted transformed dataset is stored in the Linux Scale backend table named sentiments. Once the data source is registered successfully, we can look at the sentiments Linux Scale table. Each row contains the calculated tweet sentiment, positive, neutral, negative, and a score. Notice that the tweet's data is not stored in the backend for privacy reasons. The last thing we will show in this demo is the registration of analytic functions that will run on the processed and ready data in backend tables. Later, in the next demo, we will see that these analytic functions will be used from the Policy Development Toolkit. First, we register the heat map analytic function. We now register the sentiments aggregator and analytic function. At any time, we can list and see the available analytic function in PolicyCloud. Here we see the two analytic functions we just registered with their information.